Hey guys, what's going on? John here from What's Spinning, here tonight to chat about this new Sleaford Mods album, Spare Ribs. Sleaford Mods are a Nottingham-based duo consisting of Jason Williamson and Andrew Fern, and over the years, Sleaford Mods' music has been really hard to classify. They've been classified as everything from punk rap to post-punk to electro-punk to spoken word to minimalist music. It's been all over the place. However, their style is mostly just very minimalist beats from Andrew Fern and very politically charged, very intense spoken word pieces from Jason Williamson. And their music has more often than not just blistering and absolutely no holds barred. I personally enjoyed their early days quite a bit, their self-titled project as well as the Meccan. There was a rawness and urgency to their music that I hadn't heard in punk in quite some time, but it also just sounded so freaking dirty. To me, it sounded like Jason and Andrew were literally recording this in like a super dirty apartment. There were also early projects like The Originator and Spectre and Wank, which were kind of middle of the road for me. They were decent, but they didn't have the same urgency as their early recordings, and I felt like Sleaford Mods needed to maybe shift a little bit, which I think they did around the time they signed to their first record label and released Austerity Dogs. They might have not been, blaring out these spoken word intense pieces over the classics, but the much more dismal, skeleton-like DIY and minimalist beats here actually gave their music new life. And for me, Divide and Exit was my favorite of their works. But the last few years, Sleaford Mods have kind of gone back to this middle ground where I feel like they're fine, but they've been kind of coasting. Key Markets absolutely had great moments, but it also had a lot of filler. I can say the same about English Tapas. But it was 2019's Eaten Alive that came to me and honestly made me think that the band really needed to shift things up. And with the release of these new singles, I was shocked. I mean, all of a sudden we're getting vocal guests, which is something we've never had in the Sleaford Mods category. And also, these beats that they were working with, the instrumentals are much more electronically tinged. Let's chat about this thing. And honestly, a great bulk of this album is a really refreshing turn. This album starts off with a very hyper-paced new brick. And while short, under a minute, I might be in the minority here, but I think it's pretty solid. It's very bulky and heavy sounding, but it ushers in this much more electronically tinged sound of Sleaford Mods very nicely. I mean, it's nothing to write to your friends about, but this works for me. Then we have Nudge It featuring Amy Taylor, which is fantastic. This sounds great. I love the production here. The beat here also is on the bouncy side. I mean, if you're not into the more minimalist side of Sleaford Mods, this might be something to check out. To me, this just seems like the kind of shift that they needed right about now, all while keeping the same bass sound that I fell in love with years ago. Also, wow, 3 weeks into 2021 and Amy Taylor has snuck up on this channel once again. Her contributions to this track are great. Also, out there, maybe my favorite track here. This reminds me of an early track from Sleaford Mods, like their mixtape, if you want to call it that, days. Like, really, this is a dangerous, gloomy sounding track that just seems like it could bite you at any minute. And as always, the commentary here is spot on. It almost always is. Mork and Mindy featuring Billy No Mates also really excited me from the instant that I heard it. I love the sort of electro-punk direction that this track goes. It's something they've toyed with before in the past, and this sounds great. This is a great example of what they can do with a more electronic sound. And yeah, I get it. That could be a little intimidating. But it's tracks like this that actually make it kind of easier to take in. Also, the chorus here is really classy. It really makes for an interesting contrast, but without taking away just everything just so nasty about the Sleaford Mods sound. Tracks like All Day Ticket make me crave more of this sound. It's upbeat, it's got a great groove to it. It's also super hypnotic and mesmerizing at parts, which is something that, once again, I loved about the early days of Sleaford Mods. It's even catchy when it needs to be, which is not something I can always say about these guys. Now, this is a newer sound for Jason and Andrew, so there are a few low points here. Top Room, oh boy, this is certainly not for me. As a matter of fact, it is my least favorite track here. I mean, as always, the lyrical performance and the brashness of Jason It's awesome. That's not what bugs me here. It's the production. This just is not really, I don't know. I just feel like it doesn't add up. I get it. It's very DIY. It's very minimalist, like a lot of great Sleaford mod stuff, but I don't know. It's just not hitting it with me. The title track, Spare Ribs, also does not really sit well with me. It's one of the longer tracks here. It's also just so ugly. Look, I could take a grimy Sleaford Mods track. That's not what's putting me off here. Like, look, this might do something for some of y'all. And once again, lyrically and vocally, fine. This is great. But I don't know, the complete package here just doesn't come together. Something's off. And sadly, the finale to this album just does not cut it. I Don't Rate You is a tough one for me. I actually think the bulky beat is pretty decent. But I don't know, a lot of this track just seems out of place. This sounds like a halfway decent track on Eaten Alive. Not only that, but some of Jason's vocals and bars here are some of his most obnoxious and annoying on this entire album. And Fish Cakes as a finale is such a letdown. Hearing this beat, let me tell you, my toes freaking tapping. But then Jason just pops in with this unbelievably lackadaisical vocal performance. And I get it. He's going to have tracks like this where it's not as brash and angsty and in your face, but this is just not it, man. I just kind of find that this track is a little bit boring. Outside of that, I think this is probably the most enjoyable Mods project in a while. Shortcummings is Sleaford Mods by the book. Like, this is their sound to a T. You get the moody bass riff, you get the tinny production, you get that drum machine, and you get Jason blaring over all of it. And it's something that I'll never hate hearing from them. This is a fine track. Jason's tongue-in-cheek performance is super sharp as always. And I don't know, this time around it just seems so much more full of piss and vinegar like he did years ago. I haven't heard him this raw sounding in a while. And Elocution is just one of my favorite tracks here. Like, oh my god, this performance is great. Some of the commentary here on independent venues is just freaking hilarious. It's also one of the more electronically tinged tracks here, which if you liked some of the early tunes on here, you're gonna want to check this out. Glimpses is probably the most post-punk sounding track here. It's super hypnotic, it's very catchy. I mean, it might be a little bit cut and dry, a little meat and potatoes, but honestly, it's one of the sharper tunes here. And Thick Ear is a really late album treat. I love how harsh and anxious this instrumental comes off. Not only that, but as far as Jason's performance goes, this is one of his best rants here. I also love the layering here. This sounds like a very minimalist Sleaford Mods track from a distance, but underneath we get some vocal layering from Jason, which actually comes off really nice, as well as a pretty wild sounding guitar riff under all of it. This is a very interesting track. This is a very solid Sleaford Mods album. They go in a more electronically tinged direction, which is something that they've teased a lot of in the past, and come up with a very decent set of tunes. I don't think they rewrite anything here. I think they could still grow with this sound. But honestly, for a guy like me, who thought that the mods needed just a little bit of a shift away from, becoming a little stagnant, this was really nice to hear. It's a very solid album from Sleaford Mods. I'm feeling a very strong 7 on this album, but let me know what you guys think down below. If you liked the video, be sure to give us a like, give us a subscribe, and let me know down below what you would like for me to chat about in the future. And until next time, have a great day, guys.